and now we're going to get to the controversial section of our program today, which is that both Simon and I, and not Vegas, so we really have to own this because we can't
Yeah.
blame Vegas for this one, we're low on the Los Angeles Lakers. I know that Lakers fans are ecstatic after a huge turnaround after the trade deadline last year. A trip to the Eastern Conference Finals, a
Western even.
resounding Western Conference Finals. My bad, a resounding defeat of the Golden State Warriors. Things are, and then they've followed up that success by having a really solid offseason, and the Lakers are operating like a normal healthy franchise that like improves their depth and make smart signings to help the players they have on board rather than just like going to grab whatever the biggest name star they possibly can. So big applause for that. But yeah, both of us are low on them. We'll get into why, but let's maybe just quickly recap a busy offseason for the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean a lot of off-season moves this offseason that like the Lakers are one of the teams that were getting a lot of praise coming out of free agency. I think a lot of people liked the moves that they made. Perhaps me and Ian liked them a little bit less.
People just like activity, right? Like
Yeah,
when your team's doing something, you're so happy, and when your
yeah,
team's not doing something,
especially
when other teams are, you're mad at the GM, and
yeah,
so it's
especially a team like the Lakers. They didn't have a lot of cap space to work with after they re-signed their guys necessarily. So they pick up guys who appear to be like decent role players for not a lot of money. I can understand where the praise is coming from, but yeah,
the
they
further we get
drafted.
away from it, though, the further we get away from it, the more I'm just looking at this list of players and being like, who cares? What was the excitement here? Like,
Well, let's
there's
get
some.
into them.
You're right. You're right.
And
You're
then we
right.
can talk about it. Okay, so they drafted Jalen Hood-Schifino out of Indiana. That was their first rounder, and they drafted Max Lewis in the second round out of Pepperdine. And then they signed. Is it 3 players or 4 players? Anyway, they signed. Jackson Hayes, Tarian Prince, Cam
4 players.
Reddish, and Gabe Vincent, and then they re-signed D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura, and Austin Reeves, all to probably about fair market value.
I'd
Austin
say
Reeves,
they got a great deal on Austin Reeves.
yeah, arguably a pretty good deal on Austin Reeves. I mean, all these young guys who look promising in the playoffs have that like potential bump, right? Because people want to pay them based on what they could be rather than necessarily the player that they have been performing as the past couple of years. So yeah,
I
if
disagree
Austin
about
Reeves
Austin Reeves on
continues
that
to get
one.
better,
I
okay,
think Austin Reeves has always been good. His minutes have increased, his roles increased, and he's like, I think I remember just seeing him in preseason as a rookie, and I'm like, oh, that kid can play, and he's
yeah.
done nothing but play since
Well, he's
then.
he's been really good on the national team
Yeah, I
in
also
the
just
World
felt
Cup.
like the past couple of years when the Lakers were, in the Russell Westbrook era of the Lakers, when things were not so happy, I was quietly like, I think Austin Reeves is like their third best player. Like I know the numbers wouldn't back that up in terms of like he wasn't getting the big role, but I'm not surprised
Yeah,
to see Austin Reeves do that. And then for him to go put up like Manu Ginobili numbers in the playoffs was just sort of like he shot 44% from three. He put up 4 assists and 4.6 assists, 4.4 rebounds, 17 points. Like that is that and on top of that he gets to the free throw line. Like he's just a
mhm.
very very complete shooting guard. Doesn't exactly have top tier athleticism, but just is like as solid a shooting guard as there is in this league.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe I would have had more questions if he did get like the 4-year, $100 million deal. But I
Yeah,
mean, that's
yeah.
still I think he was an undrafted player, or was he a second round player? Anyway, he was on the type of contract where he wasn't eligible for like a massive amount of money on this extension. It had to be below $100 million and 4 years or less. So, I mean,
Yeah.
he wasn't going to get overpaid necessarily, right? Because that option wasn't even available to him. But
Just the fact that the Lakers did not have to match a bigger offer sheet from another team, and then they didn't pay the
yeah,
maximum they could have paid him, just seems like, well, that's an automatic win. Because yeah, he was in line for a massive like overpay. I mean, overpay subjective, but like he was in line. He was very highly valued in the league, or at least we all thought he was going to be very highly valued in the league, and the Lakers were going to be forced to pay just whatever the maximum amount of his value is.
yeah, and
So
you do it
that's
if
a
you're the
win.
Lakers because they have LeBron and Anthony Davis making max money. Anthony Davis also signed a 3-year extension this offseason.
Yeah.
Maximum extension, so he'll be around for another few seasons, regardless of what happens to LeBron. So
Yeah, making like 65 million a year on or at least on the back end of that contract. That's
yeah,
wild.
makes
He's
Dame
got
at 63 million a year look like a bargain.
I don't know if I go that far, but
Yeah, so
but
let's talk about kind of where we're at with the Lakers. So yeah, they do get into the playoffs through the play in. They make the 7th seed. They beat the Grizzlies in the first round in what wasn't really that competitive of a series. I mean, the Grizzlies were missing their starting and their backup center, so the Grizzlies were just really small. They're playing a 6'7" dude at the 5. And
yeah.
against the Lakers, that's not going to work out. You know, as we saw, the Lakers kind of just overpowered them with size and rim pressure, and yeah. And then like against the Warriors, that was also like a lot less competitive than I thought it was going to be going in. But also at the same time, like Klay Thompson had like a historically awful series. No one on the Warriors really played all that well other than Curry. Um,
I do think that it's I mean, even just like watching the games, not just like looking at the numbers. Clay missed wide open shots, and they gave Clay Thompson wide open shots, and they got away with it.
yeah,
You have to account the fact like usually giving Clay Thompson wide open shots, even though this is like not the prime Clay Thompson or whatever. Like him missing that many open threes is a significant swing in the victory. They might have just beat them anyways. Had some of those gone down, but like it would have.
well, maybe,
I don't
but
know if that was.
the other thing that not a lot of people mentioned at the time, like so few people were talking about it. I was like watching the games, and then afterwards, I was like forgetting that this very huge thing was taking place, which was like Kevon Looney missed the first 3 games of the series
Yeah,
with like a horrible flu, and then he came back and he just wasn't very good, you know.
he
And
didn't. He didn't miss any games, but he wasn't able to play minute. Like he wasn't able to play big minutes. He went
Oh
from
yeah,
like
he was
being the
playing
sort of
like a couple minutes a game, and yeah, the
yeah
Warriors that were already this tiny team, even with Kevon Looney on the floor, just had like no size. And also,
yeah
like Kevon Looney was like the hero of Game 7 against the Kings, and he was grabbing every single rebound, and he just like had a really incredible series, and then was pretty much a non-factor against the Lakers.
I mean, the Warriors were essentially able to fight back against Anthony Davis with Kevon Looney on the floor, and then
Yeah,
whenever Kevon Looney wasn't on the floor, Anthony, you don't like it feels really bad for as an opponent when Anthony Davis is just giant, because it's like he's not the biggest guy in the league, but if you're in a matchup where he gets to be the biggest guy in the series or just on the floor, like he changes to a different kind of player where he's so physically overwhelming,
yeah,
like all over the place kind of thing. And then we saw that dramatically switch for them in the next series when they played Nikola Jokic, and Anthony Davis just does not look big enough, and they need 2 or 3 of him. But yeah, it was one of those series where the one opponent just kind of is breaking down. The other injury the Warriors had, and that was like Andrew Wiggins played the last game of that series basically with like a broken rib. And like LeBron James knew that and was like, Lakers fans were just like, LeBron's back. Like this is what like he was saving this. He was saving this for when he needed it. I'm just like, he got to play against a defender with a broken rib all of a sudden, and he was just like all of a sudden there was no way to keep LeBron out of the paint. I'm glad
yeah.
LeBron can do that, but don't think like that he had the option of doing it earlier in the series and decided to save it for a special occasion.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it was a different story against Aaron Gordon the next round for sure. But
yeah.
so
Um,
I mean, both of us don't have the Lakers making the playoffs, or at least, I mean, I basically have them in like the 10 seed, essentially play in, you could call it, along with the Pelicans. I'm not like completely out on this team making the play in, but I would be surprised to see them make like a high playoff seed and have guaranteed home court. I will go that far.
I wouldn't go as far as saying I wouldn't be surprised. But I wouldn't be surprised by anything in the West this year. I just think there are maybe 12 teams that could
Well,
be
I just
ranked
think
anywhere
in
from
order
10 to
for that to
12.
happen, LeBron and AD have to have very healthy regular seasons and play
Yeah,
most of the games, and we haven't seen them do that in a long time.
it's not impossible that the Lakers have good health luck this year, but it's not something that should be expected either. There,
Yeah.
people will be like, LeBron's foot was hurt the last season. Totally valid thing to point out. Expecting LeBron to bounce back from that injury and just be healthier, this year, you never expect a guy in his age 39 season to bounce back. Like, you could get lucky. LeBron could play better this year than he played last year, but that would be like not a miracle, but not the thing you should expect.
Yeah, I mean
And
he hasn't had a healthy season in quite a while, so
I would say if AD has an MVP level season, the Lakers are a contender. I'd say if AD has another injury prone season, the Lakers aren't a playoff team. And I'm not really banking on LeBron. Like, I think LeBron needs to like stay healthy. Like,
yeah.
like LeBron's role needs to shrink, because he's also like does not have the same ability to carry an offense. Even when LeBron was healthy this past season, you can ignore a whole bunch of stuff and pretend LeBron was peak LeBron sometimes, or that he even has the same game. LeBron was forced to settle for a lot of tough mid-range shots, both in the regular season and the playoffs, and he was
Yeah.
totally capable of kind of grinding out kind of wins and grinding out tough offensive possessions. But he is no longer this like point of the spear that punctures the defense and then opens up offense at the team level. Like, he's kind of scoring in the margins now rather than scoring in a way that drives good team offense. LeBron can still get his numbers and score and contribute, but we saw so many times, especially after the trade deadline, when they had a real team and were capable of getting contributions from multiple places. The ideal situation for LeBron right now is to blend in and add playmaking and add scoring and like use his craftiness to find little edges and be competitive. He can't really be the driving force of your offense anymore if you're going to have a good championship level offense.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, like, with some of the moves they made this offseason, they gave him a whole lot of help. I mean, I have seen some people make the point that we need the ball in LeBron's hands less, like in the fourth quarter of these games, and in Austin Reeves' hands more. So, I mean, I
Mm.
think the two of them kind of splitting some of that primary playmaker duty will help.
Yeah. I think Rui is a good, like, Rui kind of scores in the same way that LeBron does, but if they
Yeah,
can find him being with them for the whole season and that identity is just kind of like a pure scoring finisher type, I think could work out for them. I think D'Lo can also play better. He's been wildly up and down all his career, and he's not a player that you feel you can depend on. But would it be crazy if D'Lo had a good season? Like, no, D'Lo shot like in Minnesota
yeah. I
last
mean,
year. D'Lo shot like amazing for like 3 months, and then flamed out in the playoffs. And I think with him, it's more he's not always a reliable shooter. He's hot and cold. And then on defense,
yeah.
he just dies on every single screen. So it's harder to play him
Well,
in certain
D'Lo's role
matchups.
on the Lakers was weird because, like, on the Timberwolves, he was kind of like pick and roll operator. I mean, more looking for his own shot than others, but like had a very consistent pull up mid range game. And then on the Lakers, at least in the playoffs, on a lot of occasions, he was like 3 point heat check guy, which is
Yeah.
not at all his game. And he did have like one game against the Warriors where he kind of won the game for the Lakers down the stretch by getting hot. But I mean, that's not really the role that you want sorry, D'Angelo Russell playing. Tongue twister there. That's not really the role that you want him in your offense.
I don't really know what role you want D'Lo for anymore. Like we've
Maybe
seen the
you
full
don't want
range.
D'Lo.
Well, he's just so unreliable, and kind of like we've seen him play so many different roles on so many different teams, and look really good at it for stretches.
Mm.
And then he's just done so many strange disappearing acts,
In the
a
playoffs.
whole in the playoffs and for stretches of the season. He started last season in Minnesota, just like really bad, and the season before that he did the same thing, just kind of like what is going on. And he's got weird funny holes in his game. I was so shook to discover that he doesn't know how to throw lob passes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I spent the offseason being like, oh, picturing D'Lo to Gobert being kind of like a glue piece to the offense in Minnesota, and then just like learning in the preseason, D'Lo doesn't really throw lob passes, and he's complaining that he's not very comfortable doing it. It's just like, but he's
Why
wait,
not?
what?
You're the point
and
guard.
and then I went back, and because I swore I remembered, like, him and Jared Allen running pick and roll perfection. I went back and looked at some tape, and checked the numbers, and was just like, oh, he didn't really throw lob passes to Jared Allen either. This guy doesn't really throw lob pass. That's weird.
Yeah.
And that obviously, so I don't know. He's just really strange. He's a total wild card. there's going to be moments where he lifts the Lakers this season to winning streaks, and there's going to be moments where the Lakers nation is calling for his head, and just
Yeah.
hopefully for the Lakers he pops the right time. But let's get into some of these offseason additions and why we're not as
Yeah,
excited
I
about
mean,
them.
they basically replaced, in their lineup, they had Dennis Schroeder last year. They had Lonnie Walker. They had Troy Brown and Wenyon Gabriel playing spot minutes, not a whole lot. And then they basically didn't really have a backup center for the playoffs. And they replaced that with Gabe Vincent, Cam Reddish, Tarian Prince, and a backup center, Jackson Hayes.
Yeah. So Gabe Vincent, I get the hype because of the playoff run that Miami just had. And I do
Yeah.
think that Gabe Vincent is like a good, solid, all around rotation guard in terms of like he can do a little bit of everything. He can kind of play different
I
roles
just
for
feel like
you.
his primary attributes are like toughness and hustle.
Yeah, yeah, but that's good. That's a good thing to have. I think
That's,
what some Lakers fans don't
yeah,
understand is that like he's not the level of shooter that maybe they saw in the playoffs last year, or at least hasn't been in his career. And he's not
yeah,
like a monster defender either. But I think he's able to fit into a he's a good defender that can fit into a team. He's not the point of attack defender that Dennis Schroeder was for them last year,
no.
and he's not the ball handling attacker that Dennis Schroeder was for them last year. I would say he's a little bit of a better outside, a little bit more of a consistent outside shooter than Dennis Schroeder. They're similar by the numbers, but I trust Gabe Vincent's shooting just a little bit more there.
I'm not super
Um,
excited about Game Vincent. I mean, to me, the main signing that they made this offseason that I think is going to have like some impact on their playoff chances is probably Tarian Prince. Just having a
yeah,
reliable spot up shooter and guy who can defend multiple positions at a reasonable
yeah,
level is going to be
those
big.
picks
I mean,
are
every team needs that. So,
Yeah, anytime a team with aspirations of being a contender adds another versatile wing that can shoot and defend multiple positions, that's a big deal. That's like that.
yeah.
And Torian Prince, got to see him play a ton in Minnesota. He's not a player that lights the world on fire, but what I always really liked about him is just how well he like unlocks lineups. Like it was just always
Mhm.
easy to play different players around him. Like he just was never in the way of anyone. Like you can play
Yeah.
Torian Prince with anyone, and he's going to be able to kind of fill a role. He's got a lot of hustle. He's got some injury problems. He can be unreliable in that way. And he's not like an amazing shooter, but like good enough shooter, good enough defender. You can throw him into a front court with any two other guys, and he's going to find a way to make an impact. So that's really good. They also had Cam Reddish, who's like you got to see him play a little bit at the end of Portland
Hmm.
there, and some people are Cam Reddish diehards. So, any thoughts there?
He's a great tank commander if you're not trying to win games.
He's also a good point of attack defender. Like he's
Yeah.
disruptive with his long arms in matchups.
No, he's really quick. He's super long. And he is actually a pretty great spot up shooter when that's his role in the offense.
Yeah,
So, I mean, yeah, initially when we went over kind of some of the offseason moves some of these teams were making, I was like, I really like Cam Reddish as your eighth man. And like, I don't know, it'll take the season to kind of bear out to see if that holds true or not. Um, but I think if he can find a consistent role where he's not, because like the biggest thing about Cam Reddish is he wants to make things happen with the ball in his hands if it swings to him, and
yeah,
often that thing that he wants to make happen is not like making the right extra pass. So
yeah. Loves to like pump and drive right into his defender's chest, go into a Euro step. Then that Euro step turns into like a bit of like a step backy fadeaway where he doesn't lose his
yeah,
defender even for a minute. And then now we're taking that shot. Cam Reddish is also super young still, even though he feels like he's been in the league for many years now. So we'll see if progress is never surprising for young guys. I think it's like a perfectly good pickup. At least there's a chance that sort of pops. They also really like what Max Christie looked like in summer. Like a lot. I don't really know Max Christie that well. I remember being
mhm.
surprised to hear his name called in the draft, but a lot of Lakers media has been really high on him, and he did look good in summer league. So
Yeah. I mean, he was a guy who had some hype coming out of high school, but I think that you know I think that his college career, his lone college season, wasn't super impressive. I mean,
Yeah,
Michigan State's just been kind of odd the last few years. Where
yeah,
I mean, they still have like it's very much a Tom Izzo system. It's still a very like defensive driven team, but like their half court offense is kind of clunky and relies a lot on I don't know. I mean, I'm not a Michigan State expert, but the offense just like leaves a lot to be desired. It's definitely not an NBA style offense. So
right.
yes, I mean you didn't necessarily see NBA prospect Max Christie exploding in college, but it's a guy with some talent.
Yeah. Um, People made a deal about Jackson Hayes as well, despite the fact that he hasn't really found a role in the NBA yet.
Yeah,
He
he's
has
fine.
shown
Just another energy hustle big.
he's super tall and super mobile
Yeah,
for his height in some ways, especially like sometimes when he slips a screen and dives to the rim, it feels like he teleports. He's shown some flashes of shooting ability, but in no way consistently. He's shown some impressive stretches as a rim protector. They there 2 seasons ago they were like playing that he was part of that kind of like inspiring Pelicans run to the playoffs where they would often play him next to Jonas Valanciunas and go dual big, and he was able to do some interesting things in that context. But like for the Lakers made a big deal, like they wanted to get bigger this offseason, especially after they're too small to guard Jokic. And they haven't really done that. Like if Jackson Hayes is the totality of them doing that, I still think it's going to they have enough size in terms of like, Jared Vanderbilt, LeBron and Rui next to AD, but if the only player bigger than AD is Jackson Hayes, that doesn't really seem to add up anything. I guess
yeah.
they're kind of excited about Colin. They got Colin Castleton on a two-way, and Lakers fans liked what they saw from him in summer league. He's like a fun player to watch. I'm not really sure whether that translates to him having a role on the team this year, though.
Oh man, yeah, I don't know about Colin Castleton. He was kind of like a post scorer in college.
Well, he's got a crazy floater hook shot, like one just like from 12 feet away. He gets
Yeah,
crazy extension on this thing and shoots at like 30 feet in the air and it comes down. And he's a good passer.
yeah.
He's like a skilled big man with like decent feet, but probably mobility issues in the NBA level. So it's like not clear whether that's an NBA player or not. But
Yeah, I mean, I
um,
think he's another guy who's probably a little bit too lanky to be an impactful defensive player right away.
yeah,
But he's young and it's just a two-way contract. So
yeah. I think the
yeah,
Reeves and Rui thing are like Reeves and Rui being in their roles for the whole season, I think is going to be the most stabilizing thing the Lakers have. But I think just to summarize or like, stick to the main point that Simon and I think both feel pretty united on is that like this team goes as far as AD and LeBron's health takes them, and neither of
yeah.
us are willing to bank on their health. So I'm sorry, Lakers fans, that we're putting them this low. Obviously, they've got immense potential to outplay this ranking and get home court advantage in the playoffs, or even be a really high seed. But looking at their prospects next to some other teams, I'm just it's hard for me to feel great about it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard to judge teams based on like injury outcomes, but I mean, with LeBron at his age and his history these past couple of years, it's starting to feel like a bit of an inevitability. And then, Anthony Davis has never had a fully healthy season
Yeah,
and missing 35-40% of the season is pretty typical for him. So this doesn't really feel like betting on like a possible outcome. This should be the expected outcome, and then they have upside if guys are more healthy than that.
yeah. Okay, that's it for the Lakers.